Oh, hey, we got the co-pilot here. Hold on a second. Hi, co-pilot. How are you? Yeah, she wants to do some reading herself, but it would all come out sounding like she was asking for food. Meow, 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 meow. Right, buddy? And, you know, it was interesting because we talked some sci-fi horror with Henry Kuttner and C.L. Moore, the husband and wife team, a while back, and read a really cool story, a dystopian story about future United States tyranny. And it was quite interesting. Replaceable bodies and very, very cool stuff. Sort of had an Invasion of the Body Snatcher vibe. And by the way, we'll talk about Finney in that book very soon. What a great novel Invasion of the Body Snatchers is. But right now I want to go back a little further than The Outer Limits, and I want to go back a little further than George R.R. Martin, and I want to go back further than Kuttner and C.L. Moore, the husband and wife team. And I want to tell you about a character from across the pond. Quite an interesting man, very well respected, a man whose work influenced many, many, many people. And so, as we see on our billboard for Liberty Conspiracy, we're going to go in here and just show you real quick. Here it is on tonight's Liberty Conspiracy, otherwise known as now our channel for fiction. You got it. It's Fiction Friday with Algernon Blackwood. Oh, what a great name, huh? Well, this is a series of books that have been released that I really enjoy. It's a British company. It's the British Library. And you might have seen some of these advertised. They have a whole series of these with these really cool covers, basically two-tone covers, black and another color. And then you got the lettering in white. A lot of them have been edited by the same person. Occasionally they brought in some other editors. And in this one, this has a different editor. This is John Miller. And next week, I'm going to read to you a story that comes from one of the books that was edited by the main editor, Mike Ashley. This is going to be interesting. These are short stories that have been written by relatives of some of the famous writers of all time. So, for example, next week I'm going to read to you a story by the fifth removed niece of Sheridan Le Fanu. So, and it's cool. It's going to be very interesting. So there's lots of fascinating things. Sometimes they might be related and maybe they write mostly nonfiction, but they find a short story and it's a cool story. Like, all right, put it together. We'll put that together and give some honor again to Sheridan Le Fanu and show the family tree and all that stuff. Well, in this case, I want to go with Algernon Blackwood, who was, of course, heavily influential on so many people, whether it was H.P. Lovecraft or people like T.E.D. Klein, whether it was Robert E. Howard. So many great writers were influenced by Algernon Blackwood, who is responsible for some of the greatest otherness stories that set the template for other writers to come. So this is on page 127 in the British Library book called Weird Woods, Tales from the Haunted Forests of Britain. And there's a quick biographical sketch by the editor John Miller here that I want to give to you. Algernon Blackwood, born 1869, died 1951, is one of the most renowned exponents of weird fiction and surely the master of the weird wood, hence the book. He turned to trees in many stories, but most notably in two of his great novellas. One of my favorites of all time, The Willows, in 1907, and in 1912, The Man Whom the Trees Loved. These tales are striking for the way that trees appear as purposeful actors. In The Willows, two canoeists on an epic trip down the Danube, I'm not going to say anything else. And in The Man Whom the Trees Loved, I better not say much else. This is a story called Ancient Lights. Here it is. From Southwater, where he left the train, the road led due west. What he knew, for the rest he trusted to luck, being one of those born walkers who disliked asking the way, was... Sorry, I've got to start again. I screwed up. I'll have to edit this out. Sorry. From Southwater, where he left the train, the road led due west. That he knew. For the rest he trusted to luck, being one of those born walkers who dislike asking the way. He had that instinct, and as a rule it served him well. A mile or so due west along the sandy road till you come to a stile on the right, then across the fields. You'll see the red house straight before you. He glanced at the postcard's instructions once again, and once again he tried to decipher the scratched-out sentence, without success. It had been so elaborately inked over that no word was legible. Inked-out sentences in a letter were always enticing. He wondered what it was that had to be so carefully obliterated. The afternoon was boisterous, with a tearing, shouting wind that blew from the sea across the Sussex Weald. Massive clouds with piled, rounded-up edges cannoned across the gaping spaces of deep blue sky. Far away, the line of downs swept the horizon like an arriving wave. Chanctonbury Ring rode to their crest, a scudding ship hulled down before the wind. He took off his hat and walked rapidly, breathing great draughts of air with delight and exhilaration. The road was deserted. No horsemen, bicycles, or motors, not even a tradesman's cart. No single walker. But anyhow, he would never have asked the way. Keeping a sharp eye for the stile, he pounded along, while the wind tossed his cloak against his face and made waves across the blue puddles in the yellow road. The trees showed their underleaves of white, the bracken and the new high grass bent all one way. Great life was in the day, high spirits and dancing everywhere. And for Croydon surveyor's clerk, just out of an office, this was like a holiday at sea. It was a day for high adventure, and his heart rose up to meet the mood of nature. His umbrella with the silver ring ought to have been a sword, and his brown shoes should have been top boots with spurs upon the heels. Where hid the enchanted castle and the princess with the hair of sunny gold? Where his horse? The stile came suddenly into view and nipped adventure in the bud. Everyday clothes took him prisoner again. He was a surveyor's clerk, middle-aged, earning £3 a week, coming from Croydon to see about a client's proposed alterations in a wood, something to ensure a better view from the dining room window. Across the fields, perhaps a mile away, he saw the red house gleaming in the sunshine, and, resting on the stile a moment to get his breath, he noticed a copse of oak and hornbeam on the right. Aha, he told himself, so that must be the wood he wants to cut down to improve the view. I'll have a look at it. There were boards up, of course, but there was an inviting little path as well. I'm not a trespasser, he said. It's part of my business, this is. He scrambled awkwardly over the gate and entered the copse. A little round of walking would bring him to the field some time later. But the moment he passed among the trees, the wind ceased shouting and stillness dropped upon the world. So dense was the growth that the sunshine only came through in isolated patches. The air was close. He mopped his forehead and put his green felt hat on. But a low branch knocked it off again at once, and as he stooped, an elastic twig swung back and stung his face. There were flowers among both edges of the little path, glades opened on either side. Ferns curved about in damper corners, and the smell of earth and foliage was rich and sweet. It was cooler here. What an enchanting little wood, he thought, turning down a small green glade where the sunshine flickered like silver wings. How it danced and fluttered and moved about. He put a dark blue flower in his buttonhole. Again, his hat, caught by an oak branch as he rose, was knocked from his head, falling across his eyes, and this time he did not put it on again. Swinging his umbrella, he walked on, with uncovered head, whistling rather loudly as he went. But the thickness of the trees hardly encouraged whistling, and something in his gaiety and high spirits seemed to leave him. He suddenly found himself treading circumspectly and with more caution. The stillness of the wood was peculiar. There was a rustle among the ferns and leaves, and something shot across the path 10 yards ahead, stopped abruptly, an instant, with head cocked sideways to stare, then dived again beneath the underbrush with the speed of a shadow. He started like a frightened child, laughing the next second that a mere pheasant could have made him jump, as he had. In the distance he heard wheels upon the road, and wondered why the sound seemed pleasant. Good old butcher's cart, he said to himself, then realized that he was going in the wrong direction, and had somehow got turned round, for the road should be behind him, not in front. And he hurriedly took another narrow glade that lost him. And he hurriedly took another narrow glade that lost itself in greenness to the right. Now that's my direction, of course, he said. The trees have mixed me up a bit, it seems. And then he found himself abruptly by the gate he had first climbed over. He had merely made a circle. Surprise came almost as discomfiture at that moment. And a man, dressed like a gamekeeper in browny green, was there, leaning against the gate, hitting his legs with a switch. "I'm making for Mr. Lumley's farm," explained the walker. "This is his wood, I believe." He stopped dead because it was no man at all, but merely an effect of light and shade and foliage. He stepped back to reconstruct the singular illusion, but the wind shook the branches roughly here on the edge of the wood, and the foliage refused to reconstruct the figure. The leaves all rustled strangely, and just then the sun went behind a cloud, making the whole wood look otherwise. Yet how the mind could be thus doubly deceived was indeed remarkable, for it almost seemed to him that the man had answered or spoken. Or was this the shuffling noise of the branches? That the man had pointed with his switch to the notice board upon the nearest tree. The words rang on in his head, but of course he had imagined them. "No, it's not his wood. It's ours." And some village wit, moreover, had changed the lettering on the weather-beaten board, for it read quite plainly, "Trespassers will be persecuted." And while the astonished clerk read the words and chuckled, he said to himself, thinking what a tale he'd have to tell his wife and children later, "The blooming wood has tried to chuck me out, but I'll go in again. Why, it's only a matter of a square acre at most. I'm bound to reach the fields on the other side if I keep straight on." He remembered his position in his office. He had a certain dignity to maintain. The cloud passed from below the sun, and light splashed suddenly in all manner of unlikely places. The man went straight on, He felt a touch of puzzling confusion somewhere. This way the copse had of shifting from sunshine to shadow doubtless troubled one's sight a little bit. But to his relief at last, a new glade opened through the trees and disclosed the fields with a glimpse of the red house in the distance at the far end. But a little wicket gate that stood across the path had first to be climbed. And as he scrambled heavily over, for it would not open, he got the astonishing feeling that it slid off sideways beneath his weight and somehow towards the wood. Like the moving staircases at Herod's and Earl's court, it began to glide off with him. It was quite horrible. He made a violent effort to get down before it carried him into the trees, but his feet became entangled with the bars and his umbrella, so that he fell heavily upon the farther side, arms spread across the grass and nettles, boots clutched between the first and second bars. He lay there a moment, like a man crucified upside down, and while he struggled to get disentangled, feet, bars, and umbrella, they all formed a form of a net. He saw the little man in browny green go past him with extreme rapidity through the wood. The man was laughing. He passed across the glade some 50 yards away, and he was not alone this time. A companion like himself went with him. The clerk, now upon his feet again, watched them disappear into the gloom of green beyond. "They're tramps, not gamekeepers," he said to himself, half mortified, half angry. But his heart was thumping dreadfully, and he dared not utter all of his thoughts. He examined the wicket gate, convinced it was a trick gate somehow, then went hurriedly on again, disturbed beyond belief to see that the glade no longer opened into fields, but curved away to the right. What in the world had happened to him? His sight was so utterly at fault. Again, the sun flamed out abruptly and lit the floor of the wood with pools of silver, and at the same moment a violent gust of wind passed shouting overhead. Drops fell clattering everywhere upon the leaves, making a sharp pattering as of many footsteps. The whole copse shuddered and went moving. "Rain, by George," thought the clerk, and, feeling for his umbrella, discovered he had lost it. He turned back to the gate and found it lying on the farther side. To his amazement, he saw the fields at the far end of the glade, the red house too, ashine in the sunlight. He laughed then, for of course, in his struggle with the gate, he had somehow got turned around, had fallen back instead of forwards. Climbing over, this time quite easily, he retraced his steps. The silver band he saw had been torn off from the umbrella. No doubt his foot, a nail, or something had caught in it and stripped it off. The clerk began to run. He felt extraordinarily dismayed. But while he ran, the entire wood somehow ran with him, around him, to and fro, trees shifting like living things, leaves folding and unfolding, trunks darting backwards and forwards, and branches disclosing enormous empty spaces, then closing up again before he could look into them. There were footsteps everywhere, and there was laughing. There were crying voices, and crowds of figures gathered just beyond his back, beyond the glade, until the glade he knew was somehow thick with moving life. The wind in his ears, of course, produced the voices and the laughter, while sun and clouds, plunging the copse alternately in shadow and bright dazzling light, created the figures. But he did not like it, and went as fast as ever his sturdy legs could take him. He was frightened now. This was no story for his wife and children. He ran like the wind, but his feet made no sound upon the soft, mossy turf. Then, to his horror, he saw that the glade grew narrow, Nettles and weeds stood thick across it. It dwindled down into a tiny path, and 20 yards ahead it stopped finally and melted off among the trees. What the trick gate had failed to achieve, this twisting glade accomplished easily, carried him in bodily, carried him among the dense and crowding trees. There was only one thing to do: turn sharply and dash back again, run headlong into the life that followed at his back. Followed so closely that now it almost touched him, pushed him in. And with reckless courage, this was what he did. It seemed a fearful thing to do. He turned with a sort of violent spring, and head down and shoulders forward, hands stretched before his face, he made the plunge. Like a hunted creature, he charged full tilt the other way, meeting the wind now in his face. Good Lord! The glade behind him had closed up as well. There was no longer any path at all. Turning round and round like an animal at bay, he searched for an opening, a way of escape, searched frantically, breathlessly, terrified now in his bones. But foliage surrounded him. Branches blocked the way. The trees stood close and still, unshaken by a breath of wind, and the sun dipped that moment behind a great black cloud. The entire wood turned dark and silent. It watched him. Perhaps it was this final touch of sudden blackness that made him act so foolishly, as though he had really lost his head. At any rate, without pausing to think, he dashed headlong in among the trees again. There was a sensation of being stiflingly surrounded and entangled, and that he must break out at all costs, out and away into the open of the blessed fields and the air. He did this ill-considered thing, and apparently charged straight into an oak that deliberately moved into his path to stop him. He saw it shift across a good full yard, and being a measuring man, accustomed to the chain and the theodolite, he ought to know about movement and measurement. He fell, saw stars, felt 1,000 tiny fingers tugging and pulling at his hands and neck and ankles. The stinging nettles, no doubt, were responsible for this. He thought of it later. At the moment, it felt diabolically calculated. But another remarkable illusion was not so easily explained. For all in a moment, it seemed, the entire wood went sliding past him with a thick, deep rustling of leaves and laughter, myriad footsteps, and tiny little active, energetic shapes. 2 men in browny green gave him a mighty hoist, and he opened his eyes to find himself lying in the meadow beside the stile, where first his incredible adventure had begun. The wood stood in its usual place and stared down upon him in the sunlight. There was the red house in the distance as before. Above him grinned the weather-beaten notice board, "Trespassers will be prosecuted." Disheveled in mind and body, and a good deal shaken in his official soul, the clerk walked slowly across the fields. But on the way, he glanced once more at the postcard of instructions and saw with dull amazement that the inked-out sentence was quite legible, after all, beneath the scratches made across it. Quote, "There is a shortcut through the wood I want to cut down, if you care to take it," end quote. Only "care" was so badly written, it looked more like another word. The C was uncommonly like a D. "That's the copse that spoils my view of the downs, you see," his client explained to him later, pointing across the fields and referring to the ordnance map beside him. "I want to cut it down and have a path made here and here." His finger indicated direction on the map. The fairy wood, it's called, and still called that. It's far older than this house. Come on if you're ready, Mr. Thomas. We might go out and have a look at it. And that is the story from Algernon Blackwood, Ancient Lights. (1869 to 1951), Algernon Blackwood. I think one of the greatest stories of weird ever written is The Willows. That has some similar themes to The Willows. And if you remember us reading Joseph Payne Brennan's story, Canavan's Backyard, based out of New Haven, Connecticut, similar themes. And I wonder, Joseph Payne Brennan has passed away, but I would love to find out whether he was inspired by Algernon Blackwood's Ancient Lights, about the forest and dimensions and things moving and things like that. That, of course, has a very strong connection to the fairy folk horror, and fairy tricksters and things like that, dangerous, stealing kids, out of British legends and things like that, British folklore. And but quite interesting when you think about that, that we, read Canavan's Backyard, and Canavan's Backyard I read before this one. And the more contemporary setting of Canavan going to visit the bookstore owner who has that backyard that seems to stretch on and on and on. And then he builds it up and you find out the funky background of that backyard. And it's a great story. And then, of course, I haven't read the sequel for a while here on the show, but Canavan's Calling, we'll do Canavan's Calling as well, because that's a great story too. You probably remember it if you were watching a few months ago when we read it. But there's so many great stories to read. Now, that story is a short one. The Willows is more of a novella, so it takes a lot longer to read, obviously. So I won't read that one live unless I do it in multiple parts, and I'd have to do it, like maybe if we do a fundraiser, I'll read it and then I'll take a break and we'll show something. I'll come back with some lemonade. We'll do more or something like that. Just keep reading. But there are great versions of the Willows that are out there. You can find them on YouTube and things like that. You can get a LibriVox reading of it if you go to the Internet Archives. You get it all Algernon Blackwood stuff. But Blackwood, obviously very influential as far as a folk horror writer, but beyond folk horror, especially with the Willows, because this one has a direct link to folk, the fairy folk, but the Willows doesn't. The Willows, I'm just going to tell you, if you're into like Lovecraft and, something as just an unexplainable phenomenon, and it seems to have some sort of malevolence behind it. Now, if you're a Christian, you understand what the malevolence is. My earlier days, before I, became a Christian and I was reading the Bible and things like that, just the spookiness of something really weird, some sort of weird spirit, something out there, that was chilling enough. If you read The Willows, I think you'll really like it. And I've always wanted to go down the Danube, and the idea of going down the Danube is absolutely fascinating. And the fact that he puts these guys in a canoe going down the Danube is really, really cool, because it really makes them vulnerable. So check out The Willows, Algernon Blackwood. He's just excellent. And I hope I read that well. Let me know, because occasionally you flub up and you're like, oh, I want to go back. I want to do that bit again, or that sort of thing. It's a live read. So hopefully it's okay for you. And I'm going to give you an update now. Let's do an update on the Tower story. So I'm looking forward to giving you this. We've got a lot more written on Tower. So this is the story. If you're just joining us on former Star Trek writing fellow, this is a story I'm writing based in 1960 in Vermont, as a woman named Caroline and a guy named Paul are co-workers for the Vermont Forestry Service. And they're going out on a Friday to close up this tower, a fire tower, that used to be on a hill in a town that years and years and years before got flooded out to make a reservoir. They evacuated everybody, took their land, and it's surrounded by deep, deep forests. Nobody goes there. Nobody's supposed to go there because it's a water resource. But this fire tower exists now in the middle of this gigantic lake. And there's no trees on it. It's just rock and scrubby brush. And so they have to go. It's the end of the season. It's mid-November. It's getting cold. There's been some thin ice here and there. And they go to close it up, make sure it's all closed up. They check out the outer fence, a mile away through the woods. That is the exterior, just to make sure the gate's closed up and everything. It seems good. They go in, they take a canoe across, and a big, big wind squall comes up while they're in there, and they didn't attach the canoe properly. The canoe floats away, and they realize it, and now they're stuck there. So the man, Paul, who's had some experience in Korea, it's 1960 again, tries to swim out to get it. It's super, super cold. She has to go out and rescue him. They spend the night trying to build a tiny little fire in this tower, and with twigs that they can get. And she warms him up. He comes back. Then they have a little bit of food. He puts out like a help sign with stones so that maybe somebody could see it, that sort of thing, if they're overhead. And they realized that when she got the Jeep out, she didn't sign a requisition form. She just got the keys. And even their check on the location isn't even scheduled. Somebody had taken it off the schedule. It's not even scheduled. So nobody knows they're there. They don't have any, they're not married. Both of them are sort of lonely people. They've got nobody who will even know they're gone. So they know they're going to be there for at least the weekend. So they get they have some snacks that he had in his pack. And they end up using some barbed wire that goes around the little circle of the tower. And the barbed wire has some weird plastic ribbons on it. Somebody has broken into the tower and written some graffiti, some weird graffiti on the walls, very strange stuff. And somebody put these weird ribbons that are reformed to look like scorpions or something. It's very strange. And Paul's got a scar on him and some guilt about what the CIA leader of his little group of people did during one night in Korea, killing a little boy and his dog. And this guy's literally got physical and mental scars from the boy fighting back. He didn't kill the boy, but the boy hit him with a hatchet and on his hip. So they have some fish, and they catch a couple little sunfish using some worms that they can dig up. So that's a success. And they cook the fish, they boil it, and this guy remembers on the way back from Korea, they got to stop off in England, and all the food was boiled. And he says, I thought it was going to be great, and it wasn't. It was not fun at all. And so they want to get cleaned up a little bit. And so he talks about the culture of England. This is the story Tower, and here we go with a little bit more. He poked at the fish. I got the impression that the British, while he was there, that they'd accepted some kind of behavioral conditioning, like kept animals, still living in accordance with their old ration days. A moment of silence passed as they ate, each occasionally extruding a bone from pursed lips to wipe it onto their pants or flick it into the gathering gloom. You ever traveled abroad? He asked. Caroline shook her head, an honest lamentation. Local. Pretty much. I was raised in a series of orphanages and foster homes. Oh, shoot, I'm sorry. I hope I'm not dredging up bad memories. And Caroline smiled at him, knowing the firelight would show it and hoping her honest display would give him the right impression. They built a little fire near a break in one of the small windows. They have no radio, nothing, no bathrooms. They have to go outside, that sort of thing. She smiled at him. Not at all, Paul. It wasn't so bad. Each of us experiences crazy things in life, and sometimes in the heat of the madness, it's hard to see the benefits. It must have been hard at times. No, it was, and I can't offer what some might consider an easy answer, that I didn't know any different, because during those times when a foster couple or family would take me in, I'd go to a regular public school, and I could just feel how the others didn't know how to assess me, that they looked at me with a mixture of pity and incomprehension, and it almost always made them stay distant, left me sitting alone at the lunch table. Alone. I had to work hard to make friends, but at the same time not look desperate or artificial. She took another forkful of fish, teasing the flavors from the meat and the oil, thinking about school lunches, bad potatoes, fish sticks on Fridays, and chopped veg. She always threw that away. I've thought about travel, and part of my plan to find my parents. So they're still alive? He said it more as a statement and question together. And she pulled one side of her mouth. Don't know. They completed the last few bites in the meal in silence, and Caroline placed more twigs on the hungry little fire. I wish I had more substantial food to feed this poor little thing, she said. Oh, it's good enough, and we'll need it. I have an instinctive sense that tonight will be colder than last. And I'm already feeling grimy, like I need a bath. I'm not going to slide into that water again, that's for sure. Here, Paul extended his open hand. Give me your mug, and I'll grab the others that are around here and go get more water. We can heat some over the flame and use it to refresh ourselves a bit. I'll throw out the bones while I'm down there. And she handed it to him, suddenly pleased that being stranded here at least on this island, they didn't have to worry about sensitive bears making themselves a nuisance. When he returned, they set about breaking more twigs and leaves off their store of burnable material, and as the heavy eyelid of night descended upon them, they warmed the water by placing their mugs in a circle around the flames. Caroline tested the water with a finger, anticipating where in their curious abode would be most conducive to leaving a puddle when she dribbled it into her hair and on her face. They had 3 mugs each, unless they wanted to descend in darkness and gather more, repeating the process. Paul issued a whimsical regret that they hadn't a single tea leaf or shred of mint in their collected store of brush, and they waited, the cocoa darkness thickening around them, and the ageless sorcery of fire asserting its dominance over their most prominent features, shifting and caressing with strokes of amber and orange, as if intent on making their dirty, oily faces works of Halloween art. When they had heated and used the water, after they had enjoyed the cleansing, almost healing culmination of their multiple stages of work, and after they had offered small smiles and sighs of satisfaction for the feeling of that warm liquid helping to cut the grease and grime and shed it from their skin, they sat back, faces dripping and glistening in the light of the fire. Paul looked around, as did Caroline, finally taking off his state-issued button-down shirt and using the sleeves to dry himself. And Caroline used some spare paper to do the same. Then she poked it onto the paper clips near the fire and sat beside him, close to the little campfire. Paul nodded. Job loyalty won't prevent me from burning every record and graph here if we need to, Caroline, he said. No, I'm with you. But so far, so good. His eyes strayed to the floor, and he inclined his head. You don't mind bunking side by side again, do you? Oh, it's fine, she said. It worked well last night, and I suspect you're right. I think it's going to be colder tonight. With a nod, he brought up his knees once more and leaned onto them. I'll see if I can remember some old ghost stories then. And Caroline nodded as well. It wasn't paradise by any stretch, but with that bit of food and the fire, a new sense of cleanliness as well, the surety of sleeping comfortably through the night seemed much more reasonable. His little time break. She awoke abruptly to the sound of his moans. Beside her, wrapped in his jacket and wearing his hat and gloves, Paul grunted, flinching back as he lay beside her on his side. He bent at his waist, grunted again, and Caroline slid closer, seeing his tightly shut eyes and grimacing, strained expression. Paul? He gritted his teeth, rolled onto his back, and she got to her knees and went to him. Jesus! Oh! Paul? She got to him. He grunted again, placed his hands on his stomach. What heat rose from his exposed skin, poisonous and alive. In an instant he was up, scrambling to the corner where Caroline had washed her face and hair, grunting and moaning and vomiting in great explosive bursts that splattered into the firelight and away into the dark. He drooled and coughed and sank to his hands and knees, and when she reached him, he was breathing hard. Oh, Jesus! He hissed, and upchucked again with a strange, strangled, inarticulate cry. Paul! The fish! I must have screwed up. Oh, man. He vomited again, and Caroline put her hands on his shoulders, feeling him heave and heave, smelling the acidic effluvium, the tang in the air that had once been inside the man. He was shaking. Oh, God, Caroline. Oh, God. Nothing in her years had prepared her for something like this. Trapped on terra incognita, she tried to offer comfort, tightening her grip on his tense shoulders as they lurched and his body convulsed like a giant snake. As his stomach emptied and his breathing hissed, Caroline's mind went to the mugs, to water. Could he hold any water? To the backpacks. Nothing in them that was of value. The tower was an empty display case of officialdom and disuse as well. If she were back in Burlington, she wouldn't hesitate to take him to the ER for food poisoning. But here, no escape, no medicine to speak of. And this had the potential to be life-threatening. His gloved hand touched the top of hers where she held onto his shoulder. "Thank you," he hissed. So intensely did he hiss, so desperately, she could tell he was focusing just to articulate to her. His breathing slowed. His nerve-stripping spasms calmed, but still he quivered, collapse seeming imminent. She bent closer and got to one side of him, seeing a line of saliva drop from his bottom lip as he stared open-mouthed at the puddle on the floor. "Help me outside, Caroline. It's going straight through me." He heaved again and seemed to block the result of that move. "Please help me." She hauled him to his feet, helped keep him steady as he achieved a twisted crouch and miserably staggered forward, feet dragging and flopping like they were made of lead. Without her, he would definitely keel over like a felled tree. But they made it to the door, and as she reached for the handle, he fell leeward against it. Then he dropped to his knees again and slid his shoulder around the edge as she pulled. And he kept whispering in a barely audible, airy, weak voice, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Then he flopped outside, crawling into the black of the cloud-sealed night, into the eternal gaze of the wind-whispering pines around the lake. She closed the door and waited. She heard him suffer and struggle with a system out of control. How far out of control she could not know. And if it were life-threatening, there was nothing she could do. She couldn't get off this island. She couldn't get him off this island, this godforsaken rock, and across the immense fluid barrier that their own employer had created. She couldn't save him. She couldn't help him. She heard and felt the pain, knowing how bad this could be. And this could just be the start. And she dragged her mind back, away from those thoughts, concentrating on trying to offer any kind of help to Paul. "I'm here. I can join you if you need me," she said through the door. He was whispering to himself, grunting and whispering. She heard the name of God again in the form of Jesus. "I'm sorry, Jesus. I'm sorry. Please forgive." A sharp, inarticulate cry of pain. A brutal, "Oh!" And the word God again. She flung back the door and found him in the pitch, lying on his side with pants undone, the seat of them pulled back. His bowels had evacuated and left him breathing hard, agonized, lying on his side as the trail of glistening feces fouled the floor near the far, waist-high steel barrier that overlooked the night. The stench was blistering and alive, and she bent over him to grip his right hand. "Go back, Caroline," he whispered. "There could be more, please." But she didn't care. "I won't let you lie out here, Paul. You need to be near warmth, and you need water." "I can't get... He winced and gripped her hand more tightly. "Okay," she said. "You got a lot out. I'm going to do this slowly. You just help me pull as best you can." He pushed with his feet, and she pulled, and she slid him back over the transom, and then he let her lift him by his armpits, and he hobbled on his knees with her help, his pants falling away, the stench rising up, his body convulsing, and hand still gripping like a vice, now locked on her forearm. When she let him go, he seemed thankful to be near the fire and his backpack, which became his pillow again, and she gathered paper to wipe him down. "I'm sorry," he whispered, as she scrubbed and threw away sheet after sheet. And then he faded into sleep, and she was left to nursemaid him without really being able to do a thing. The night drew on and challenged Caroline as if a living thing. Sleep was elusive, itself a form of prey she could not pinpoint, could not corral. She stayed awake to watch Paul and feed the fire, feeling his burning forehead and hearing him moan. And then, after a countless number of hours, after sitting, standing, dabbing his forehead with water, drinking some herself, and going out to expel her own liquids, she sat beside him, then lay down to sleep. It was oily and black around the tower as the firelight danced, and she could not sleep. Not only was she worried for Paul as he groaned and spoke in this strange form of slumber, she was worried overall. And that's all I've got. So, again, Paul has the food poisoning. He's in rough shape. And all I'm going to tell you is that while he sleeps and moans, he's going to be saying some things. That's what I will tell you. So that is right now where Tower stands. I don't know if I was ever inspired by Algernon Blackwood with the forest around, but Tower is going to be, if I can get some time to really work on it this week, Tower is going to be about 3/4 done. And there's about another quarter left. And that's going to be very intense. It's going to be very intense, like Repo Man. Life of a Repo Man is always intense. Taylor Saunders in Rumble says, "I'll never eat fish again, ever, 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 except maybe fish sticks." Oh, man, that's great. That is great. Yeah, I'm going to make some dinner myself. I've got some good stuff ready to roll. And actually picked some dandelion greens. I've been doing it almost every day. Real good vitamins in those things. And it goes good. I mix up a bunch of things because I can only eat certain things right now. And those are good. They're a good source of vitamins. And they're easy to get. They taste great. You know, I know what to pick and stuff. So I always think Angry Tiger and his amazing powers to forage mushrooms and stuff like that. Just great stuff. And by the way, around here, we've got strawberries, wild strawberries. Amazing. All I can think of is the Beatles' Strawberry Fields Forever. Amazing. I used to go with my mom. There were these two hills, Ben's Hill, and then it's really all one hill, but it's separated by a stone wall, and the other part of it is much steeper. And we used to call that Dead Man's Hill. And that's where I broke my arm. I had to walk back through the woods and across the stream and barbed wire fencing and stuff like that. So out on Ben's Hill, my mom and I would go out there because they had wild strawberries. And this whole zone where we are in this sort of hollow has a lot of mountain laurel, a lot of vines. We used to swing on the vines out in a place that we call the Valley of the Vines. And strawberries in the open areas, strawberry fields just naturally. And they've come out here because that area, the son of the man who owned it, ended up cutting some trees that caused such intense wind to blow through that the trees he left standing literally some of them just got split in half. So we called that the Forest of Desolation. It was like the Tunguska event. It was just no limbs on the trees, just sticks sticking up. It was the weirdest thing. And that's where we do like live action role playing before we even knew what it was, before Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. And it was fun. And we did that in the Valley of the Vines and the quarries and stuff we called the Spirit Stones. It was cool. And I'd set up these different quests that people would go on, and we'd have staff battles for the victors and stuff, you know, to win crystals and stuff like that. So it was fun. And so we'd be bruised, but it was fun. And And so out in one of those areas, before it ended up getting overgrown because they built some houses. So getting access to it, you kind of felt weird going like between the two houses on like a property line, trying to get through, cross the stream and stuff. So it made it a little more difficult to go over to Ben's Hill and stuff. But, you know, we'd go sledding over there all the time. And I actually knocked myself out one time. I went so high in a jump on a sled, on, you know, face forward, that my head hit, and I woke up at the bottom of the hill. I was like, wow, man, that was intense. But yeah, it's fun. You know, you do a lot of crazy stuff. My mom and I would go out and we'd pick the strawberries and bring them back, put them in a little water with some sugar, and they're little mini strawberries. You can tell, you know, that bigger strawberries clearly, you know, were derived from them. But now, we never had something like this before. We would have wild raspberries out in front of our driveway, and occasionally get some wild raspberries, you know, in our yard a little bit. But now we've got this entire backyard of like just strawberries. It's wild. Strawberry fields forever. And there are two different kinds. There's the regular strawberry-shaped strawberries, and there are these rounder ones that don't have as much flavor, but they're strawberries too. Absolutely crazy. And we have some blackberries that are getting ready. Those are coming up as the strawberries sort of are on the wane now. So amazing stuff that's all in the area. Really, really cool. Maybe I'll write a story about somebody eating some wild strawberries. Who knows? Maybe he's going to go into that Fey Wood, right? Yes, indeed. Hey, thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you had an awesome, awesome night. We're going to have a great time next week. And please join us for former Star Trek writing fellow. Watch the video we got to do about Charlie Chan. I think you'll find that fascinating. Absolutely amazing stuff. Really cool stuff. And we even got to read the opening of the very first Charlie Chan novel, which is just a great example of concise, efficient, beautiful writing. So that'll be out soon. And please check this video out. Spread it to friends if you like the reading of live short stories. And we'll do some marathon live short story reading too when we start up with the, when we start up with the fundraiser for getting the books out and stuff. So that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. So thanks, everyone, for being here for the political economic analysis from a voluntarist point of view. And if you're watching for the fiction, if you're not familiar with that, join us Monday through Friday on Liberty Conspiracy, 6 p.m. on Rumble. That's our other channel. And if you're joining the Rumble show for Liberty Conspiracy and you want to spread the word about what we do for fiction, it's going to be great. And again, we're just getting started. So I'll leave you with the control voice on a 3.5-hour major show and maybe 45 minutes of fiction, going back to television black and white wildness, my friends. Yes, the outer limits. Say goodnight. Thank you again. Find us on Substack. Hang out there. We'll have the post about Charlie Chan inside its own tab now for former Star Trek writing fellow. And do remember that if you want to get, you know, gold or silver, you can go to the connection through my Substack to Wise Wolf Gold and Silver Exchange. Thank you guys for doing that. And you can always contribute on Rumble over at my Substack. Just subscribe. That's a great way to do it. It's awesome. So we'll leave you with the outer limits, memories of Vancouver, and even years before that. Have a great night, everyone. Peace. God bless.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to the outer limits.